The Indiana Fever are that golden destination, and I can't help but laugh to the fans and the people online and the media commentators, unfortunately, who said that nobody wanted to play in Indiana. That doesn't make any sense.
People in the Fever were like,
That's not my point. There's a lot of other shit going on that players are like, this ain't where I want to be.
Over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some new shit going on around there.
It's a lot. So you have players that are very significant on this Indiana Fever team that are like, I don't
want to be here.
This is where I want to be.
She said that Kelsey Mitchell was actually the first person she hit up because they built a bond here, playing AU for the last 3 years. She said she heard some good things about Caitlin Clark from her Aces teammate.
They said the Indiana Fever couldn't sign top free agents. They mocked the franchise for years, claiming no superstar would ever choose to lace up for a team that once struggled to keep fans engaged, let alone attract fresh talent. Certain commentators, Sheryl Swoops being the loudest among them, bet the house on predictions of Indiana flopping in free agency. Yet here we are, mere months later, watching headlines explode with news of prize signings. If you believe the doubters, you're in for one eye-opening ride. It's almost comical now, remembering how confidently some people declared that the Fever locker room was an unwanted destination. But that story evaporated the moment multiple star players signed on the dotted line. In the past, Indiana was often overlooked, overshadowed by the bigger names in the league. Nobody gave them a second glance. Now, fans are doing double takes as the Fever shape up to become a serious contender, maybe even a championship threat. So how did this seismic shift happen? What forced the naysayers into silence? And why is Sheryl Swoops nowhere to be found when people ask her to address Indiana's sudden success? Hold on tight, because the truth is a roller coaster ride of hype, controversy, and underdog ambition. Stick around to find out how Caitlin Clark and the rest of the Fever's new blood just might be rewriting the WNBA narrative faster than anyone expected. Before free agency even kicked off, certain figures in the basketball world were already penning Indiana's obituary. The loudest among them? Sheryl Swoops. She's a legend, no doubt about that, but her recent string of critiques aimed at Caitlin Clark and the Fever painted a gloomy picture. Swoops took to various platforms, from podcasts to social media snippets, to warn that no serious player would want to join a roster plagued by what she described as questionable leadership and deep-rooted problems. To hear her tell it, the franchise was steeped in chaos. Her words carried weight because she's not just any commentator. She's a Hall of Famer who changed the game in her own right. Fans and media outlets alike treated her statements as near gospel. As her takes circulated, a wave of public opinion swung against Indiana, with people echoing the same refrain. If Sheryl Swoops says it's bad, it must be really bad. The alleged issues ranged from an unhealthy locker room culture to friction between the coaching staff and certain players. Every rumor magnified the narrative that the Fever were simply not a desirable destination. But beneath those dire warnings lay a puzzling contradiction. Even as Swoops cast doubt on Indiana's culture, they boasted a core that included electrifying young talents like Caitlin Clark and Aya Boston, plus a proven scorer in Kelsey Mitchell. Clark, in particular, was shattering rookie records, lighting up the scoreboard, and attracting massive crowds. Despite that, critics still fixated on the notion that free agents would avoid Indiana at all costs. Some in the media tried to push back, questioning whether Swoops' opinions were fueled by personal bias or outdated intel. After all, organizations evolve, and the Fever were actively working on a massive facilities upgrade. Yet Swoops remained steadfast, propping up her narrative with anecdotal references to unnamed players who allegedly wanted out. The basketball world braced itself for a humiliating offseason in Indiana, one in which the Fever would fail to recruit and might even lose key players. Little did the skeptics know, a bombshell was about to drop. Behind the scenes, Indiana's head coach, Stephanie White, had been cooking up a plan so audacious it would either catapult the team into contention or backfire spectacularly. She refused to settle for the slow and steady rebuild that so many WNBA franchises cling to. Instead, she wanted to capitalize on the sudden surge of attention Caitlin Clark had brought to Indiana. From local endorsements to network TV coverage, Clark was boosting the Fever's profile in ways no one could have predicted a year prior. Stephanie White saw the opening and pounced. She worked closely with the team's front office to build a recruiting strategy around two main pillars: showcase the potential of playing alongside Caitlin Clark and offer a state-of-the-art environment that made it impossible for players to ignore the Fever's pitch. They also doubled down on marketing efforts, pushing the narrative that Indiana wasn't just a basketball team. It was a cultural shift in the making. Brand new facilities worth upwards of $80 million served as a beacon for anyone skeptical about the franchise's commitment to winning. But White didn't stop at glossy sales pitches. She and her staff scouted relentlessly, making personal phone calls to free agents and meticulously presenting how each player's skill set would fit into the Fever's evolving system. This wasn't a half-baked approach. Every move was purposeful, every conversation laser-focused on how to transform Indiana's fortunes. Critics who'd once shrugged off the Fever started to take notice when bits of their plan leaked. After all, an $80 million facility upgrade isn't just for show. It signals deep-pocketed support from ownership, a willingness to invest in top-tier medical resources, strength training, and media outreach. In a league where players are often promised improvements only to see them fizzle, the Fever were different. They were actually delivering. By the time free agency officially opened, Stephanie White and the front office had everything lined up: money to spend, an alluring narrative about joining Caitlin Clark, and a brand new facility to seal the deal. Then came the signings that shook the WNBA. The first domino to fall was Natasha Howard, a defensive phenom renowned for her shot blocking, athleticism, and championship pedigree. Howard could have gone to any number of contenders. Yet, instead of picking a safe, established franchise, she chose Indiana. This single move was a powerful refutation of the "nobody wants to go there" narrative. Howard publicly praised Indiana's revamped approach, mentioning how excited she was to join a system that valued her two-way game and gave her a chance to be a foundational piece of something special. No sooner had the buzz around Howard subsided than news broke of Dana Bonner signing on. A Swiss Army knife of a player, Bonner is known for scoring in bunches, playing gritty defense, and bringing veteran leadership to the locker room. The idea that someone of her caliber, an all-star with championship experience, would elect to wear a Fever jersey left many fans and doubters in disbelief. Bonner confirmed the news on social media, expressing genuine excitement about reuniting with old friends and forging new bonds with the likes of Caitlin Clark. To top it off, she posted a pointed tweet that seemed aimed at critics. "Sometimes you find a team that's building something real, and you don't hesitate." But the Fever weren't finished. Sophie Cunningham was next, bringing her infamous trash-talking flair and lethal shooting. Her willingness to mix it up on defense made her a coveted free agent, and she happily admitted she was intrigued by Indiana's rising profile. One moment, Sheryl Swoops had been proclaiming that top-tier free agents would run away from the Fever. The very next, Indiana was assembling a dream team of personalities who gravitated toward a fresh, ambitious environment. Finally, Sydney Colson, best friend to none other than A'ja Wilson, opted to leave a comfortable situation in Las Vegas to be part of the Fever's revival. Colson's arrival put an exclamation point on this string of signings because it demonstrated that even the personal ties to a reigning championship squad weren't enough to outweigh the promise of something extraordinary brewing in Indiana. The once-dismissed franchise had become a magnet, pulling in players from every corner of the league with an appeal that transcended mere financial considerations. Beneath these high-profile acquisitions lies one central thread: Caitlin Clark. Rarely does a player in her first year turn an entire organization's fortunes around, yet Clark managed to do exactly that. Even during her rookie campaign, she put up performances that bordered on the surreal 30-point nights, triple-doubles, logo-range threes that left defenders shell-shocked. Statistically, she rivaled or surpassed established stars. Culturally, she drew a wave of fans who had never before tuned in to a WNBA game. It was the perfect storm. Early in the year, Sheryl Swoops, among others, tried to temper the hype by claiming it would take years for Clark to dominate. The truth? By mid-season, she was already top 3 in MVP chatter, regularly outdueling seasoned pros. Analysts started to question if Clark might be the biggest single-year draw in WNBA history, referencing record-setting viewership numbers whenever she stepped on the court. Social media pages dedicated to the league exploded with new followers, many of them openly admitting they'd come for Caitlin Clark. From the viewpoint of free agents, the appeal was obvious. Who wouldn't want to share the court with a transcendent talent who doesn't just score but also dishes out pinpoint passes and attracts nationwide attention? Playing alongside Clark could elevate a veteran's brand, boost a role player's stats, and generate a synergy that turns average teams into contenders. It was more than just being on a hot team. It was about stepping into the gravitational field of a young superstar who is reshaping the league's image. But Clark isn't simply a marketing machine. Teammates rave about her leadership qualities, her willingness to embrace intense practices, and her ability to make everyone around her better. She's the kind of player who holds herself accountable first, which fosters a locker room environment where veterans and rookies alike can coexist. For a league often overshadowed by other sports, Clark's presence is a beacon, and Indiana is basking in the glow. As the Fever stockpiled talent, the rest of the WNBA reeled in response. In Las Vegas, the reigning champs grappled with the loss of Sydney Colson, a vital piece of locker room chemistry who also happens to be A'ja Wilson's best friend. Even though Colson's departure alone might not sink a franchise, it symbolized a broader issue. The once comfortable aces aren't automatically the top choice for every free agent. That cracks open the door for other teams to compete more aggressively. Meanwhile, Chicago has been dealing with its own turmoil, losing core players without a clear blueprint to replace their output. The Connecticut Sun, who flirted with championship contention for multiple seasons, now face the possibility of a full-scale rebuild after a series of underwhelming playoff performances and high-profile departures. Fans and analysts alike are asking the same question: has the balance of power shifted so decisively that Indiana might soon rule the league? This notion would have sounded absurd a year ago, but the WNBA has always been a place where momentum can flip quickly. The emergence of generational talents like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and others has sped up that process. Social media platforms are flooded with hot takes suggesting that while the Aces and Liberty once seemed destined for a finals clash, the Fever may crash that party sooner than expected. Overnight, Indiana went from a footnote to a force that other teams must plan around. For many, the biggest shock isn't just the star power the Fever acquired. It's that they managed to do so quietly, with none of the flashy preludes or drawn-out negotiations that typically mark a super team in the making. When the news dropped, fans had to scramble to keep track of each new arrival. One day, it was Natasha Howard. The next day, it was Dana Bonner. Then Sophie Cunningham, followed by Sydney Colson. It's the kind of off-season blitz that dramatically resets expectations and might well reset the championship chase. Plenty of hype centers on the Fever's new signings, but it's crucial to remember they already had a budding core. Aya Boston brings a post presence rarely seen in a league full of undersized bigs. She's physically dominant, yet nimble on her feet, capable of defending some of the best scorers in the game while also putting up efficient numbers on offense. Her synergy with Caitlin Clark took shape in their rookie season, culminating in highlight-worthy plays that showcased a level of maturity uncommon in young duos. Then there's Kelsey Mitchell, a proven scorer who can torch defenses from anywhere. Some people forget that before Clark came along, Mitchell was often the only reason to watch Indiana. She carried the team through tough stretches and kept them remotely competitive. Now, with Clark as a facilitator and a lethal perimeter threat, Mitchell can step into more advantageous spots on the floor. Opponents no longer have the luxury of double-teaming her, which means she's poised to thrive even further. Lexi Hull adds a layer of hustle and unselfishness. She's the glue player who does the dirty work, diving for loose balls, setting hard screens, knocking down timely threes, and locking down opponents on defense. While she doesn't garner the same headlines as Clark, Boston, or Mitchell, her contributions form the backbone of a championship-level rotation. And let's not overlook the mosaic of skill sets that the new arrivals bring. Natasha Howard and Dana Bonner both hold championship experience, vital for a team with big postseason ambitions. Sophie Cunningham supplies that extra spark, the intangible feisty, factor that can flip the momentum of a game. Sydney Colson may not stuff the stat sheet, but her effect on team chemistry can't be overstated. Together, these pieces form a roster that looks ready to lock horns with any squad in the league. Suddenly, what used to be a question, does Indiana even have a competitive starting five? Turns into a statement. This might be the scariest starting five in the WNBA. Fans are indulging in fantasies of Clark dishing no-look passes to a cutting Natasha Howard, or Kelsey Mitchell running the wing on fast breaks while Aya Boston anchors the paint. It's an exciting time not just for Indiana but for the entire league, which seems to be on the cusp of a renaissance led by new faces. While the Fever celebrate one high-profile signing after another, one voice has grown noticeably quieter, Sheryl Swoops. Earlier, she confidently declared that Indiana was an afterthought, somewhere players might go out of desperation, not choice. She painted a picture of a battered locker room, a star rookie who wouldn't live up to the hype, and a revolving door of disgruntled veterans. Fast forward to the present, and those ominous forecasts have fallen flat. Commentators who once took Swoop's claims at face value are now questioning her sources. Did she rely on outdated intel, or was there a personal animus fueling her commentary? Swoops has made only brief statements since, often framing them as misunderstood quotes or clarifications that she merely said the transition would take time. But transcripts and video clips reveal the original tone. She was certain that free agents would steer clear of Indiana. Now that the exact opposite has happened, her credibility has taken a noticeable hit. To some observers, this tension between Swoops and the Fever hints at a larger generational clash in the WNBA. Legends from the league's earlier years carved out their legacies in a time when women's basketball fought an uphill battle for respect. Today's young stars, like Caitlin Clark, benefit from bigger social media platforms, more robust college hype, and faster ways to connect with fans globally. It's not that the old generation didn't want the league to grow. It's that seeing this level of stardom emerge overnight can be jarring. The new wave, led by Clark's almost effortless rise, represents a different kind of celebrity. Still, it's impossible to deny Clark's impact. Swoops can discount certain narratives all she wants, but the bottom line is this. Players are choosing to team up with Clark, not run away from her. The entire Fever organization has rallied around the phenomenon, leveraging it to build a top-tier roster in record time. If Swoops finds this sudden paradigm shift unsettling, she's not alone. Yet the league itself is embracing it, as more fans watch, more sponsors invest, and more eyes turn to see what Caitlin Clark and the Fever will accomplish next. In the span of a single offseason, the Indiana Fever went from laughingstock to potential juggernaut. The critics who belittled them are either silent or frantically trying to reconcile reality with their earlier takes. The cynics who wrote off Caitlin Clark as a college wonder have been forced to face the undeniable truth. She's already one of the most impactful players in the league, maybe in the history of women's basketball. And as if that weren't enough, she's surrounded by an ever-growing cast of stars who all seem to genuinely want to be in Indiana. So, what happens now? Will the Fever immediately leapfrog the Aces and the Liberty, challenging for a title as early as next season? Or will they need a bit more time to gel, learning each other's tendencies and figuring out how to distribute touches among so many capable scorers? No matter the path, the future looks thrilling. The Fever aren't just here to play. They're here to win, and they've assembled a kind of depth and leadership that could spell trouble for anyone who underestimates them. For the broader WNBA, this shift is monumental. A franchise that once languished near the bottom of the standings is now reinvigorating the league with fresh storylines and heated rivalries. Fans are already marking their calendars for matchups against Las Vegas or Chicago or Connecticut, drooling at the prospect of seeing Clark, Boston, Howard, Bonner, and Mitchell share the court. Attendance is up, TV ratings are on the rise, and social media chatter is more vibrant than ever. In a sense, the Indiana Fever have become the story in a league that thrives on big narratives. They've given fans a reason to tune in, and they've proven that you can never count out a franchise just because it's been down in the past. As for Sheryl Swoops, the invitation to admit she underestimated this team remains on the table. Whether she takes it is anyone's guess. But for the rest of us, the message is clear. The WNBA has a new powerhouse, and it's wearing red, gold, and navy. Keep watching because this journey is just beginning, and if the Fever keep building momentum, it might be downright unstoppable. Do you think the Fever will reign supreme in the near future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss another major development. One thing's for sure, the Caitlin Clark era is here, and the Indiana Fever are done waiting in the shadows. Stay tuned, because tomorrow's headlines might be even more jaw-dropping than today's.